Here we are again. Welcome back to the PT Graduate Podcast. My guest today is Mr. Andrew Wilson from Christchurch, one of our PT Council in New Zealand ambassadors, which we'll probably talk about in some detail, I think, because you've got an interesting bio. So, hi, Andrew, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rich, thank you very much for bringing me on. I really appreciate that. This is a great opportunity to chat about everything personal training.
Exactly. Yeah, brilliant. So obviously you're in Christchurch, and I think you're at is that right, Anytime Fitness in central Christchurch?
That's correct. It's a Kashmir region, but it's on Colombo Street. Sure. So one of the main streets in Christchurch.
Yeah, I know. Cool. And how long have you been based there?
Approximately 7 years now. So it's been a wee while since I've been at Anytime Fitness. It's an absolutely phenomenal gym.
Really. I don't know much about the brand, and I know it's obviously it's a franchise model. But I just scrolling through some of your from your socials, it looks like it's a very social gym. You know, there's some really good camaraderie between the team, but also really good relationship with your members as well. You know, they're really, you know, quite a close bond. There was a lady moving out of town and she was getting a bunch of flowers, and you know, not your average gym. So quite a special space.
Yeah, well, look, if you actually look at the gym from an objective measure, from a snapshot, it's really just a no frills fitness box. It's got your machines, it's got, you know, dumbbells and barbells and a group fitness room. So there's nothing really there's nothing remarkable about the actual physical setting, but what we try to focus on as a whole is the community and the culture. And we've been doing that for as long as I can remember, and it's been that which has probably been the most pivotal to the to the success of every single person in that gym, which is really cool.
Right. That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, that really is what makes the difference, isn't it? Because as you say, they are just buildings, they are just boxes, but it's how the people behave inside them that really makes the difference. Awesome. So getting into the industry, your ambassador profile is quite an interesting story, which you kindly sent through. Tell me more, share that, because there may be people who don't know you're the ambassador and certainly don't know that story. So give us the backstory.
When I was younger, and I suppose I was quite interested in rugby at that time, my folks, who were very supportive, they engaged a personal trainer at Les Mills at the time. His name was Naranjan. He helped me a lot with I suppose my strength, my fitness, and on top of that, he acted as a bit of a mentor for someone my age. I was about 15, 16 at that time. To be fair, I wasn't actually any good at rugby. I was just interested in it, and I think my parents were pretty happy to see me off the bench. So that was really, really helpful. But yeah, I think in meeting this personal trainer, I had one of those "that's why I want to be like" moments, and from there I pushed myself into a PT course. I was, finishing high school, and my friends were all taking gap years, so I thought I'm just out a course and see what I can learn, and it was just remarkable. It was really, really cool. But when I first got into the industry, I was very young. I was 17 at working as a personal trainer. So you can imagine, I found it, really, really challenging to operate as a trainer for a variety of reasons. I loved programming. And at this stage, I was also accredited in the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. They sort of took me through I think there are a number of leveled pathways. And I had the first level, the first pathway. But again, I was 17, and not many people take a 17-year-old too seriously, certainly not myself, at least. And so I took a number of, I suppose, failures on the chin. And that was hard. But in hindsight, I can see, large threads of growth and learning, which occurred as a result of that. But instead of just putting things to the side, I went into business studies. So I thought, okay, well, my weak points at this stage is probably going to be the vernacular that I use to, operate in a business and administrative setting. So
Yep.
I studied management and accounting. I got a degree,
Oh.
and I used that. Still determined. Again, I just passionate and loving of personal training. I pulled that back into the personal training business, and it blew up, which was really, really, really interesting to see that the missing link previously was probably the way that that I, as a personal trainer, conducted the business setting of my fitness enterprise, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I've recently just finished another element of studies. I've done my postgraduate studies in operations and strategic management, and that again has been supplementary to where I intend to go moving forward. But again, it revalidated the nature that the better you get at the business and administrative setting of personal training, the better things to get as a whole.
Yes.
And so that's been me for I suppose the last nearly decade now, over a decade actually. So it's been a profitable learning experience, and I've really, really enjoyed being a part of what makes the health and fitness industry so special.
Brilliant. I love that. And it sounds like that journey, starting with the inspiration of the trainer that your parents organized for you, helped you model some of the sort of, I guess, on the floor behaviors, which I guess he was a good shining example. And you were very aware of the other part that you needed to sort of add on to that to complete the whole from a business point of view. And I think that's something that some trainers can really overlook, is the fact that they're going into business. They are going to be running their own enterprise. And there may be skills they don't have, which they probably need to brush up on, so that is a nice, a sort of a solid entity, rather than one that's got broken bits that we're sort of cobbling together day to day, rather than really finding a good efficiencies. What can you give me some examples, Andrew, of some of the things that, so from a practical nature, that you learned with that business and the accounting that has made things, the words you used, I think, was it blew up. So how did that play out from a practical sense for you in terms of the business, and what impact did that have?
Well, I suppose in terms of the administrative processes that I learned, and again at that time painfully learned, is that I think a lot of trainers need to be aware of, if not involved, is in like the marketing element of their business. They need to know who they're aiming to target. They need to know how to target, and of course, what are let's say the accounting or the financial decisions behind how you should set your focus. What I mean by that is, there's a dichotomy of diversity when you diversify your business, and of focus that exists within everyone's immediate business environment. It's ensuring that you're diverse enough that if clients come and go, you've got a stability to keep yourself as a going concern. But also you don't want to paralyze yourself by trying to serve every single available market space. And so you have to focus on what is going to be the most I suppose effective for you. In an accounting setting, I think everyone is aware of tax, and for people listening, just pay your tax. But accounting, especially managerial accounting, concerns managing for growth. And the broader decision making for marketing, the things that we sort of talked about earlier, knowing how to set your target. Here's a question and a sort of an example of that. If you're a PT, you might say that the main goals of your, client base are, building muscle, losing weight, or getting fit and healthy. And you could reasonably assume a hierarchy of most people want to lose weight. Would that be a pretty safe assumption? And then it would go, getting a bit more healthy and then building muscle. That's probably, albeit a surface level guess, it's probably an assumption on the size of people who want to achieve what.
Yeah.
So you invest in some marketing, some social media, word of mouth, testimonials, user-generated content, for example. And you come up with these conclusions, and you find out that you should probably spend a little bit less time focusing on the people who want to build muscle, because they don't necessarily want to engage with a trainer.
Sure.
And so those particular decision makings can help lead you to target more, steadily the people who want what you offer, being the weight loss and the health.
Yeah.
So those are, I suppose, those type of decisions are occurring in the background of your decision making, while in the foreground you're advertising and working with people for weight loss and health.
Yeah. I think the words that stood out for me was that managerial accounting. So there's accounting where the numbers are all stacking up and they are what they are, but then you overlay that managerial lens, and that's okay, so what are these numbers telling me that helps me make decisions to push my business in a particular direction? And I think you also used the word growth as well. So it's very easy, probably for most, it's very easy to go, yes, there's my sales, there's my expenses, there's my profit. But you don't then put the paper down and go, great, it's actually right. So what decisions do I make as a result of reviewing those? And I think that's that critical eye that you're talking about, which we need to probably sharpen or refocus, because that's what then moves the business forwards. Sounds like that's what you've done in your business, and you've therefore been able to narrow down, so sort of niching to an extent, the people that you want to work with, rather than the people that just kind of walk in the door and may be your client.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I've got a demographic of people that I work with, and it's really interesting, because it's not so much a demographic in the sense where it's a smattering of people from different ages, sort of different professions, different genders, although I think it's about 75+% female for whatever reason. But what I've done as a result of my fitness studies and a little bit of the business side, is that I've established what I think all trainers should establish, and that is a coaching process that works for them. And my coaching process has been, a landscape of goal setting, challenge, encouragement, and working on habits and competence. And that seems to attract, I think people define it as a psychographic of people who consciously and acutely recognize that they want to be more competent across a broad range of health and fitness focuses. And so they engage me to scaffold them through that entire process, as opposed to one particular, I want to lose weight, followed by I've lost the weight. Thanks for your services, and I'll see you again.
There's far more depth to it. I like it. Yeah. It sounds like I'm sort of leaving the subject, but I think it ties in. The looking at your website kind of gives you an inspiring feeling by looking at the guy standing at the top of the mountain over the scenery, and you're very light on content, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But you've got a blog, so there's lots of content in your blog. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of look and feel, it's inspiring. It appeals to me. It makes me want to go, well, I want to know more about this guy, how he works, how he thinks, because you're kind of dropping inspiring things on each page, and it makes me curious. And I like it, rather than I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, as a lot of websites do. It's kind of much, it's there's more to it than that. And I guess that what that leads me on to is finding out a little bit more about this golden compass, because that sparked my curiosity as well. And I'm really interested to know what it is, how you use it, and if whatever you're prepared to share, because obviously it's something that you sell, so it's not free, and there's some value to it. So tell us what you're prepared to tell us about this golden compass and how it fits in with the website.
Well, the golden compass, I hope you appreciate the symbolism behind all of those pictures as well.
That's probably the word I should have used.
But the golden compass is really that. I suppose it's a bit of a compass, underpinned by goal setting and I suppose pragmatism.
Right.
It allows people to divine what it is they actually want. And
right.
People often get asked, well, what is it that you want? And sometimes that question is too low resolution. It's too broad for someone to actually, answer it. And it just serves as an overwhelming exercise. So, trying to work around those particular roadblocks, what are you passionate about? What are you happy to do? What makes you sad? What do you tend to avoid? Where do you tend to lose track of time, for example? Doing things that you're passionate about can sometimes give you greater insight as to what it is that you actually want, rather than just, taking the shotgun approach.
Yeah.
During my time as a trainer, one of the things that I suppose I've learned about more specifically is things like motivational interviewing and acceptance and commitment therapy and things in that particular domain of specialization. And what it seems to be the case is that people can introspect when they break things down further and then reconcile that against what they're doing and what's important to them. And so it's a way of basically breaking down, well, how have you been actively pursuing what's important, and how could you actively pursue what's important? And if you were doing that, what would that look like? And if you were to plan yourself to do that, what would that plan look like? Right. And how would that look like in a particular schedule? And how would that schedule look if it was, appropriated over, a week or a month or a quarter? How would you, for example, measure the outcomes of your activities? And then how would you tack or pivot depending on the successes or failures that ensued as a result of your daily actions and behaviors? And the golden compass lays that out quite neatly for people, and it lays it out in a way that is grounded in I would hope simplicity, because the aim is to make things more simple and smaller, so that people can operate in baby steps. And that's sort of been something that has grown organically as a result of the troubleshooting exercises that I've had with clients that have struggled with achieving things that on the surface would be quite simple to achieve.
Interesting. I like it. It's a tool that you've created yourself from the learning that you've had.
Yeah, it's definitely been something that I've probably taken. I've extracted it from my own learning processes, my own failures, which have been really, really helpful learning experiences. But there's also, I would say that the actual process itself is grounded in a number of frameworks that I've been able to, I suppose, pass down into, I suppose, more simple terms.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is it something you encourage new clients to do? Like, is it sort of a standard process before someone starts working with you? They go through the Golden Compass. Is that how you run it?
Not so much. Not
Okay.
so much. We usually spend a bit of time getting to know each other, and at which point, um, if it's something that's suitable for them, then that's exactly what we do, or at least that's exactly what I aim to do with them. But um, if it's not something that they're interested in doing, you get a lot of personality types that might just want to point and shoot.
Yeah.
Um, then we don't bother with that.
Yeah.
The cool thing about the gym that I work at is that we have a really, really good team of trainers that work. I suppose we work quite collaboratively together. We're a small team of about seven trainers, and we work collaboratively. And so, like, I've been able to pass on prospective clients who might not have been most appropriate for me to other trainers.
Yeah.
And they have done the same. And
Yeah, that's great.
and I've really enjoyed that nature of our business environment.
That's fantastic, because again, you're doing it in the best interests of your client base, aren't you? Rather than me, grab the first person that walks through the door. It's being selective and giving them the most appropriate trainer for the needs of that person, which is good. That's that whole, we work together, like you said, collaborative, as opposed to sort of working in a silo and being competitors.
Yeah, well, I heard a saying a while ago, and I really resonate with it, and that is that a rising tide elevates all boats. And it's if my colleagues are doing really, really well, then that is going to spur like me on also to do quite well. And if I develop a good relationship with them, and then that's always a two-way street. So
totally. I'm keen to hear a bit more about your studies that talked about the strategic management things, and I think this will be useful for people listening. And the transforming ops of PT from face to face to online, obviously very topical, and something that you've studied and done a paper on, or a thesis. So keen to hear more about that.
Yeah, so that was a study that I did at ARA, a post-grad diploma in strategic management. And effectively, the research report that I was conducting at the time was, how can you transform a personal training operation from a face-to-face basis to an online platform? And it was something that at the time I was undergoing. And so I wanted to, I suppose, formalize my own approach to it, but also use that as as an opportunity to do the research behind what might be the most effective means of doing that. And I think the really cool thing was, and incidentally, was it turned out that there's a lot of pragmatic necessity surrounding that particular domain shift, because as we're experiencing at the moment with all of these lockdowns, my aim was not to talk about that, but
use the L word came out.
but for those purposes, to actually evolve, or at least figure out how to actually transfer myself to an online setting. And there are it's a gold mine of questions that the report sought to answer, but the main one was that change the online process. The change itself, in terms of the business literature, we know that most changes fail and fail miserably. And so I didn't want to go through a process of extracting the face-to-face value from my business interactions and seeing that completely flop. And so one of the first points of research is that the demographics that are interested in an online fitness endeavor differ from the people who want I suppose a more real and proximal relationship. So there's lots of secondary literature around the service industry, and the interesting thing that I've found the interesting things that I found is that it's actually really hard to find another enterprise like personal training. It's a proximal relationship with people. There are, if you look at sort of other particular industries that offer a service, you've got things like doctors and lawyers and hairdressers and counselors and therapists and what have you. And a lot of them, probably less so the counseling, people wouldn't actually purchase those particular services if they didn't have to. It's what you could define as almost a grudge purchase. If you didn't have to go to a doctor because you were sick, you wouldn't go to a doctor unless, of course, you wanted a checkup, but that's beside the point. But and so trying to find helpful data on how to navigate in the personal training setting was a little bit more difficult. So I did some primary research on a number of other trainers, Christchurch, on what they found their challenges to be and what they thought an online fitness setting would look like, and what would be, if you sort of were to juxtapose them between a face-to-face setting and an online setting, what would be some key components that were still manifesting themselves in both of them, and what would fall under the knife of operational excess. One of the big takeaway points from all of that was that so long as there is a really powerful form of communication, the things that matter almost most within the personal training industry, which is transformative conversation, accountability, and relational growth between the trainer and the client, then it's entirely possible to move to an online setting and not fail.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah. And so that was, I suppose, the key findings of that report. There's a lot of change management models that take a look at sort of how to deal with people during the change, how to communicate clearly, for example, and how to ensure that operations that were necessary in one sense are able to be sort of morphed into operations that might remain necessary but not as a whole in another sense. And so that was quite interesting. But I think another really important part is the fact that this particular, I suppose, pandemic that we're facing has exploded the technological impact that the internet has had by a decade. There was very limited necessity for a personal trainer who was doing well in a fitness setting, earning anywhere between, let's say, $40,000 and $80,000 per year, to need to make that change. And then this particular environment arose around us, and all of a sudden those particular trainers were just cut down at the ankles. And so we're faced with that necessity. We're faced with that necessity, and something needs to be done about it.
Just scribbling. When I saw that, Andrew, I thought, damn, I want to see the paper. I want to have a read, because that really interests me. It's something, obviously, as you say, we've all had to grapple with, and a lot have been cut down to the knees. Is that something you're prepared to share, that document that that you wrote, and I could have a read? Because I'm just really interested in the subject, and again, it's something I've had to deal with myself, and I talk with other trainers about their business, and if there's some gems in there that I can share, and you're happy for that to happen, then that'd be great.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. No, I can do that.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Well, we're kind of motoring. I mean, I'm just checking the time, and I think we're making serious progress, and the clock is struggling to keep up with us. So I wondered if I've got to ask you though. It looks like you're a very outdoorsy kind of guy, and you love getting outside. You obviously got a dog or two dogs, and I see your bow in the background there, and there's also a guitar. So you're obviously an archer. Is that something you just sort of you wander into the bush, or do you go and do it against targets, or what happens there?
Mainly targets.
Yeah.
I imagine that sort of actually bow hunting itself is a very, very different beast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But unfortunately, that bow has been sitting there as a decorative sort of tool for the last long while. But
Yeah.
but it would be a real pleasure to get out there again. It's I am very, I suppose, nature inclined. It sort of I find that it grounds me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in Christchurch, I'm very lucky because we're sort of at the hub of so many beautiful, ranges and reserves and forests and mountains. So it made sense to
Yeah.
to explore that.
I've watched I don't know if you've seen the movie with Viggo Mortensen, Captain Fantastic.
No, I haven't seen that.
I think you'd love it. It's he's got I think 6 kids, and they live in the bush. They live wild, and the movie opens with them taking down a deer with a bow and arrow. And it's just there's lots of layers to it. But I was recommended it the other day, and I thoroughly enjoyed it on so many levels. So Captain Fantastic, have a look.
Fantastic. Well, he played a phenomenal role in one of my favorite films, The Lord of the Rings. So
yes.
Absolutely, I'll put it on the list.
Yeah. He's quite different. I mean, he's got a monster beard in this, and they're a bit feral. But he homeschools them, and they're highly educated, and then they go back to civilization because somebody dies, without spoiling too much for you. And it's how they go, with the rest of the family. Really, really interesting. So some tips, some tricks, some things you've been very generous already. I've got a long list of things that you've kindly shared, but any sort of gems, I guess, that are real winners for you that you've picked up along the way, or things you did and you thought, nah, not doing that again, that people may be interested to hear.
I suppose in a coaching setting, for the actual groundwork of personal training, the one thing I'd say is have a process. Have a coaching process. Follow a recipe. Don't wing it.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I've met, especially in the personal training environment, sort of do have that that shotgun cowboy wing it approach, and it while it may work over a 3 to 6 month period of time, it simply cannot work over a decade, and that's effectively what we're looking for in terms of business longevity. I mean, I've written down my coaching process just in case anyone's interested in hearing it.
Go for it.
And that is set clear goals, take on board the data that tells a story about the client's behavior, set small targets that take those behavioral elements and goals into account, agree on objective measures for those particular targets, delineate a set of key activities that will bring them about, reconcile the outcomes with those activities, troubleshoot and refine when they slip up. People will always slip up. It's normal. And reset and repeat. And that it's worked for as long as I've been doing it. And the more that I do it, the more it seems to work. And there are a number of concepts that embed themselves within that. Things like the things we talked about earlier, things like motivational interviewing, in terms of the initial consultation with the client and the conversations that you have along the way. Is looking at what sort of graded task assignment. So, how can you make a particular task as small as humanly possible, and then work upwards. A quick example of that, for example, if you were to say to someone, I want you to eat a perfect diet, which is in one fell swoop, that is never going to happen. But you might say, well, if that's a 10 out of 10, an A+, eat a perfect diet, what might 3 out of 10 look like? It might be, let's have, say, more vegetables. More vegetables twice a week. And then what's a 4 out of 10? What's a 5 out of 10? What do they look like? What would it look like if you were to do that? Again, just outcome-based decision-making. If it's not working, it's just troubleshoot, make a few changes, make it easier, if anything else. And one of the things that you mentioned is looking through different lenses.
Mm,
So being able to look through the lens of, let's say, the low hanging fruit, in your client's landscape of goal setting and behavior, where are the low hanging fruit? What could you immediately and easily do to change the quality of your sleep, the quality of your training? And so the aforementioned processes, the coaching process is something that I'd say everyone needs to have. And then when they've defined that coaching process, they can then expand upon each particular step and embed some more high caliber theories, practices, frameworks around each particular step.
Sure. Love it. That's fantastic. I love it, Andrew. Thank you so much. It's there's not enough paper on my pad to make any more notes. I've run out of space, and we've probably run out of time. So I feel like we need a version 2. I think in a few months' time we should probably sit down and go into it in even more detail if people are prepared to listen, because it's a fascinating thing, and I love this stuff, and I love the fact that you've got a process around how a client treatment process, I guess, if you like. Which I think you're right, we all should have, and you can't wing it forever. There has to be some stability and some process in place to create that longevity, and that's what this is all about. It's about helping people stay in and be more successful and help everybody out there that needs our help. And I think there's a pack of gems in there today that can help people do that. So really appreciate your generosity and your vulnerability and all of the things that you've shared today. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, I appreciate that. And again, thank you. I think that's something that's important to acknowledge, is that a lot of people, listen to these particular podcasts that you're conducting, and they take absolute gems from that. So I know that I have, by listening to some of the things that you've been saying. So I really want to, make sure that you're also appreciated for the things that you do, because it is absolutely gold.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew. And I hope others feel the same. So thank you. And have a great day and a great weekend.
You too. Hey,
cheers.
Thanks, Rex.
Bye.